So in this video I'm wanting to show how I've got the blackest blacks I've ever achieved with a cyanotype, and this all happened with I was literally just pouring random stuff on them to try to see what would happen. I've tried all kinds of things from different books and different forums and was not happy with any of it. So in this video I want to show the most common toning agents or things people use to tone cyanotypes, what they achieve as far as the colors, and what I did to get the, in my opinion, the best blacks I'm probably ever going to actually achieve on cyanotypes. Now there are several others you could use, and I'm not covering everything. I'm covering the basics. So we're going to be toning with instant coffee, black tea, green tea, and tannic acid, and comparing bleached versus unbleached and just all that stuff. Plus I'm going to show how I found how to do a color shift to make it as black as possible. I think it's about as black as I'm ever going to be able to get with this process. So now we'll go into the process. Okay, so before we can actually do any toning, I have to make some prints. I actually took an entire one of these and coated, so there's 30 pages there of coated paper. I wanted to put this here to show everyone what the paper is. It's the Canson XL watercolor. And then I have two digital negatives. This one's a fairly high contrast. This one's a relatively low contrast. That way we have a comparison between the two. Now I'm going to show like the test. I'm going to do a test strip for both and process one of each for you to see how I'm doing it. And then after that I got to make a ton of each one of them, and then I've got to sit or dry overnight before I can do any bleaching and toning. So this is the start of it. Didn't bother filming that because I've done that before, and that's easy. You're just coating paper. So that's ready to go, and now we're going to do some test strips to see what exposure we need and go from there. Okay, I'm going to be using this exposure unit I constructed. I was going to make a video on how it worked, but I honestly think I'm going to be redesigning the whole thing, because how it works is it has two 100-watt LEDs. One is a royal blue and one is a 380 nanometer UV. Essentially, it has about as much power as full sunlight in the summertime, which was the idea. There is a switch to turn it on. You can select either the royal blue or the UV or both, and then there is a timer built in there. The idea was you could just lay your stuff directly on it, but there's some disadvantages to that. So all it is two, like I said, 200-watt LEDs. Then they have the heat sinks and the coolers, the two power supplies with a cooling fan, and then a 12-volt power supply to run the relays and all that, plus some fans to keep anything from overheating in the box. Gonna change that, so for now we're going to use it as it is, just to run this test. Okay, so the main disadvantage of this is trying to register anything and keep it still because of it being inverted. So I've had to tape the negative down to keep it from moving, and then I'm going to use this strip of paper about there. I got to tape that down too so it doesn't move. Then we're going to put one thing to note: you always want the ink printed side facing or touching the paper. So that's going to be over the negative, and then I'm going to use this little black piece of paper to to do the test strip. So I'm just going to do 1 minute increments, and then use just a spare piece of glass I had to move it. So we're going to do 1 minute increments and see how it does. And I'm going to do this on, I'm only going to show the one, but I'm going to do this on both the negatives so I know how much time, and then I got to bang out a whole bunch of each one so they can dry for the toning test. So now that I got that there, let me get everything fired up. Okay, so I'm done making all the prints. I made some test strips. These are slightly underexposed on purpose. We're trying to push the limits here to see, you know, staining from whatever solution we're using for toning. So, you know, these aren't perfect prints, and that wasn't the point. The point was to try to see what kind of tones we can get out of them. So these are slightly underexposed. These are just about right. And this is pretty high contrast, and it's, I don't know, medium or so. The reason I'm using this paper, A, it's cheap to be doing all these prints. B, it has some kind of sizing on it that allows it to rinse much faster, so you don't have to rinse these for several minutes to get all of the unexposed solution off. So that's the reason I'm using this particular paper for this project, so I could make a ton of prints. So I got 15 of each, so we can test out different methods or different solutions for toning, and try to get the best blacks we can out of those solutions. Alright, so I'm going to keep one of each of these as the control, you know, just to see what it looked like before we did anything. So I'm going to go and get everything set up to start bleaching and toning. Okay, let me kind of go through the setup here. So this is the pre-soak. This is just plain old tap water. I haven't done anything to it, and that's to soak them and get them prepared for bleaching. These two baths are just for rinsing and soaking after bleaching and toning. I have put just the tiniest bit of vinegar in them just to kind of adjust the pH, because the water here is very, very alkaline, so it's just enough to make it neutral. At the sink, this is sodium carbonate bleach, and I've just put a few tablespoons, dissolved it, and added more water. This is where I'm going to tone it, and we're going to be doing, I have instant coffee, tannic acid, black tea, and green tea. Now, realistically, what's going to give us the really, really good looking stuff is the tannic acid, but we'll see. Something might surprise us. I am not putting any kind of amounts, because brew enough to make a strong tea with these, put enough in there to make a good strong instant coffee, and then enough tannic acid to give it some color. I don't know, exact amounts aren't going to help with this process. So the big thing here is going to be, is it going to stain the paper? Is it going to give us split tones, etc.? One thing about staining, it's going to depend on the paper. It's going to depend on what you're using to tone it with. And it's also a long period of time in plain water seems to get rid of some of that staining. So we'll see what we get, or what we come up with. Now the first test is going to be the instant coffee. You can use regular coffee and brew it. It's just simpler to do it with instant coffee. So the first two prints are not going to be bleached. They're just going to be toned, and we're going to see what a split tone how that works at full, you know, no bleaching or anything like that. So over here I've got 2 prints already wet. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn them like this, and then I can put them in the toning solution, and they can be back to back, and just rotate them here and there. So these are just soaked, and that's all I'm doing with them. We're not bleaching them, and we're going to put them in the instant coffee and see how that does. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave them in here. I'm just going to rotate them once in a while, and then come back and rinse them off and let them soak, and then hang them up to dry. Okay, so this is the coffee, the instant coffee. It's been about 10 minutes or so. You'll notice it's changed. It's not as blue, it's a darker blue. I have seen things online that said, oh, you should put it in there, you know, 45, 60 minutes, whatever. I've found that that's not going to matter. All that's going to do is make the stain on the paper worse. There's only so much chemistry in here that can convert unless you bleach it. So in this case, that isn't going to do anything. Even if you bleach it, if it doesn't do what you want it to do within 10 minutes or so, it's just going to stain. It isn't really going to make the picture any better. So anyway, with that said, so I'm going to rinse these in a shallow bath of water just to get as much as the instant coffee off. Then I'm going to put them in the 2 baths to keep rinsing out the residual coffee. But yeah, that's all for that one. So like I said, I put it in a shallow bath of water. This is just to get the majority of the instant coffee out. Also note that it's going to darken up slightly as it dries. So if it doesn't look quite as dark as you want here, well, it's going to get darker as it dries. And I'm going to scan all these for comparison. When I do the comparisons, we're going to scan these because the white balance, auto white balance, is not going to, it's not helping show this. So, okay. So I'm going to put these 2 in the first rinse water, and then I'll put them in the second rinse water, and then we'll hang them up to dry. But I just wanted to show that these are not bleached. These are just toned without any bleaching to kind of split tone them. It does make them darker. It has a better look to it. It's just not, it has an odd look to it that I don't like. And that's why I've been working to try to find the best black. So I'm going to let them soak, and then we'll get on to bleaching a pair so we can see how that does. Okay, I'm going to get my next set out to bleach and tone in coffee. I'm just doing 2 at a time. You could, I mean, that'll work just fine. So just put them back to back like this. Now, the slower you bleach them, the better. I'm not going to do it too slow just for the sake of time to do this, but we're going to bleach them to completion, and then rinse the bleach off so it doesn't affect any of the other chemistry. So when I say completion, I mean it goes to a yellowish. See, that one's already, it's almost done. So that one is, you'll see where the darkest was, it'll be literally a yellowy look. I'm going to put that in some rinse water so that it'll kind of stop bleaching now. That one's done. Same thing, some rinse water just so it doesn't affect the toning solution. Rinse that out, and then back to back again and put it in the toning solution Same thing with all this, whether you're bleaching or not. I don't think, if it isn't got what you want in 10 minutes, you're not going to get what you're wanting. So, rinse them off, put it in your toning solution. And then I'm going to let this sit. You can already see it's going to react fairly quickly with it. Now, I know this from experience, but just so you all can see, instant coffee, cheap instant coffee is going to give you almost gray tones, and they look nice. The problem is they're not near as dark as the blue was. So that's what put me down this path of testing all this stuff. So we're going to let these sit here for about 5-10 minutes and then come back to it and rinse them off. And I'm going to do another set. I'm not going to go through that on another set, but I'm going to do another set so we can have some for reference in other experiments. Okay, so we're about as far as we can go here. This is one of the reasons this image is intentionally underexposed. This is a unforgiving example. If you completely bleach it out and it's underexposed, you're not going to get much detail back if your toning agent isn't good at it. So this is why we're doing this, to see what's going to give us the best results. So I'm going to rinse these off and hang them up. I'm going to do one more set of these, and then I'll go on to black tea. Also to note, bubbles. You don't want bubbles. Normally that's why you would submerge it face down, but it can be face up as long as you make sure there's no bubbles on it, because there will be an obvious spot on it. So see, almost all the detail is gone. Now some of it will come back when it dries to an extent, but on this one, that's the underexposed one, it is just bad. Now the color, I like the color the instant coffee does. It has a very nice gray, almost perfectly gray looking gray. It's not red or brown, but even on this one it's washed out. So I'm going to rinse these. I'm going to make one more set of these, bleach them and tone them and hang them up to dry, and then we'll go to black tea. Okay, so I'm done with the coffee. I've already went ahead and bleached a couple prints, and we're going to go to black tea. This is standard tea, not like Earl Grey or anything, just plain old black tea. Same with it. It's gonna have like I said, the reaction is going to be within the first 10 minutes or so. If you wait too long, it's just going to stain. See, you can already see from that almost invisible yellow, just where you can barely see it, you can see it actually start to appear. So we'll leave this, get rid of the bubbles. I'm going to leave this in here for about 5-10 minutes or so, and then we'll come and check on it, and I'll do another set of them, and then we'll move on to green tea. Okay, so now we're going to move on to green tea, and I'm not going over every single thing I'm doing here because it's just the same. I'm taking 2 prints. I am putting 2 unbleached ones in here, and then bleaching 4 more to completion and toning them no more than about 5-10 minutes. So we'll do this one. This is the green tea. I will run all those through. Then I will do several in the tannic acid, and once they've all dried, I'll go on to the third phase of this to show what I found I can do to get the really good black colors. But we want to see the difference between all of these different well, I mean, there's more than just the ones I've shown. There's several more. These are just the easiest to obtain and what tones they provide. So I'm going to get all the green tea ones done and then move on to the tannic acid. Okay, so the final toning agent is tannic acid. And I'm just doing the same as everything else. It's going to be the 2 prints that are unbleached and then a few that are bleached. Oh, see, one thing, it's hard to dissolve tannic acid, so what I did here was I have a magnetic stir. That is not required at all. It just made it easier to speed things up to do this video. So I'm going to, same as the other ones, let it in there, and then the next video we'll be doing comparisons. Okay, so now we're going to go into the comparisons, and I know this video is going to be long, but it's kind of necessary to show all the differences. It's taken me 4 days to actually do all this with this amount of, with not necessarily the amount of prints I'm doing, but you have to think about, you have to dry the paper, allow it to dry overnight, you have to make the prints and process them, and they need to dry for at least 24 hours before you can tone them. Then you have to bleach and tone. So it just takes a while. So anyway, first we're going to go over the control, and control just means they're prints that I did that I didn't do anything to. So those are the before, if you will. So I have control A that's on up right now, and that's the one that's slightly underexposed, and then control B, which is this one. This is the one it's about right. It could have went a little higher, lower. It's about right. And then I wanted to show, just so everyone could see, this is what a completely bleached image looks like, and you can see that it's almost a yellow look. I mean, that's what it'll look like if you completely bleach it, and that's what it should look like. There should be no blue or purple or other odd colors. So that's the control set of images, and then we'll go into the different tones we've achieved through the different methods. Okay, the first set of toned images are the unbleached, which I guess you would kind of technically be split tone, but these are the ones where it's the blue's still going to be there, but the toning agent will make it slightly different. It'll add its own whatever to it. The first set is A and B, and they're the ones that were put in the coffee. Now, as far as a split tone, that would be my favorite. It's still blue, but it's darker. Not bad looking at all. I mean, it would have its own application. I've done this one a few times. Basically, it's just adding a little gray to it. This also helps if you have an underexposed image or one that you want more details to bring up to, so that's something to think about. Split toning might help bring something back up if you need it to. The next set is the black tea, and this is A and B of the black tea. It's slightly different than coffee. Like I said, the coffee adds, for some reason, it adds just a little something more, but that's just me. That's why I'm putting these up here, because maybe someone else would have better, has something, it might be for their project, but not mine. The next one is green tea. It's really, even though this is a scan, all I can say is it adds, and this is A and B of the green tea, it adds a purplish to it. I don't know how to describe it. It's like I said, it's kind of hard to see on screen. And And the final A and B is the tannic acid, and it's my least favorite as far as for unbleached images. It's a very odd purplish reddish mixed with the blue, so it's just I don't know. For split toning, I would say that instant coffee seems to give the best as far as for me anyway. Someone else it may differ. So that is the unbleached ones, and then we will go to the bleached. Okay, so now we're moving on to the bleached prints to see how it does. And the funny thing is, the coffee is my favorite when it comes to split toning it, but it is terrible when it's bleached. Like, it has an almost perfectly gray, neutral gray look to it, but the image is so washed out, it's just not usable. And I have tried overexposing, I've tried everything, and I've never been able to get coffee to really, it's kind of a shame because it has a really good neutral tone, but it just will not, it will not be the intensity that you want. Or maybe that's what you want, I don't know. So coffee, good neutral tone, but terrible as far as intensity. The next is black tea, and it's not bad. It's got far more detail than the coffee. It has a kind of a sepia color, which is fine. That might be something you're looking for. It's not as intense as I'd like, but it's not the worst. So black tea, very usable. And all of these are A and B. I'm not going to go over that every single one, but that's what it is on these. The next one is interesting. This is the green tea. And it has a reddish purple hue to it, but it's very intense. So the intensity is there, and it's really good. It's just got a very odd reddish purpley hue to it. So that's an interesting thing to note and keep in mind for the next phase we're going to go over, the final phase, if you will. And finally, we're looking at the tannic acid. Now, tannic acid has wonderful intensity. It's very dark, very red. And again, these tones they may be exactly what you're looking for just as they are. But I was looking for something a little more. So that is all of the colors or hues, if you will, that you're going to get with these 4 different toning agents. Now, what we're going to go into next is what I'm calling color shifting. So let me explain what I mean by color shifting. This is a week or so ago. I was trying to see what would happen if I just tried. I was taking different prints I had made before, and I was trying everything on them. Every different acid I had. I even tried salon grade peroxide to see what it would do to it. And that's when I came up with this image that's here, and I couldn't believe just how black it looked in comparison to everything else. And what I did to do this was, after it was toned in tannic acid, I just had it in a solution of plain white vinegar, undilute white vinegar, and that's what happened. I noticed this almost instant shift from red to a blackish tone. And I've tried this in several different ways, and that was the only thing that seemed to work. So that is that's what the point of this is to show how to shift that so you get the intensity from the tannic acid, but then it's red, so you use the vinegar afterwards to shift it to a blacker color. So that is what this next section is showing how I did. Okay, here's where we're doing the color shift to a blacker tone. This is undiluted plain white vinegar. This is just some rinse water. Then I have another rinse water container over here. I have 2 prints soaking. You want to soak them first. Do not use citric acid. I just did that test, and I'll show it just pretty much bleached the image out entirely. I don't know. I'm not sure what the reaction with that is. Well, that was on I tried it on a untoned and toned one, and it was done. So this is one that was bleached in green tea. It's got kind of a reddish hue, kind of like the tannic acid. So when we put it straight in vinegar, it almost immediately shifts to a grayer, blacker tone. And that can be intensified based on the amount of, well, if you overexpose it or something like that, that's going to make it even darker. So it doesn't take too long. Just leave it in there long enough to where you see the red shift to a grayish, I say black, but I mean it's more of a gray color on these because they're not quite as intense. Rinse them, but you can almost see a immediate shift from, has an almost reddish color, and then it just goes to this grayish black. So I'm going to do this to the remaining images and let them dry, and then we'll compare everything. But this is the essential step to get the color shift, is after toning, put them in plain undilute white vinegar. So real quick, this is just showing what I was talking about as far as using citric versus vinegar, citric acid versus vinegar. This first image was toned before I put it in the citric acid, and this second image was untoned. And for some reason the citric acid just pretty much bleached them out. So I don't recommend using that at all in any of these processes. I'll have to try it maybe in the development part of it, of a print, but just with that result alone, I don't think I want to try it with anything else I'm doing on this. Okay, I know it's been a long video, but this is the final comparisons we're doing, and these are the toned images. These are after they were toned, and then they are the same images after I have attempted to color shift them to a blacker tone. So this first set is the coffee, and it's just terrible. It's A and B. I'm doing the first one you'll see is always when I was first toned it, and then the second one is after the color shift on both of them. So the coffee is almost nothing. It's just not. I wouldn't recommend it. The next one is the black tea, and the color. There's a very slight shift in color, but nothing really significant. The next two are the ones that are worth talking about. So the first one is the green tea. So the green tea made that strange reddish purplish hue that's, to me anyway, not very appealing at all. But interestingly, after you do a color shift using the vinegar, it shifts to a more pleasing neutral color. So green tea is a nice inexpensive solution if you want to tone it and shift it to a more neutral or black color. And the last one is the tannic acid, which, well, I mean, it had the most significant intensity to begin with, but now it shifts from a reddish color to a more neutral black color. So the green tea and the tannic acid produce the best results of any of these with the color shifting at the end. So that was kind of what made me decide to do this video, and that's what makes it look. That's given it the look that I really wanted in the first place. And here is a real quick progression from the original print to the bleached to the toned in Tannic to the shifted to black, just so you can kind of see what you should look at for the whole process. I'm just showing this for the tannic acid because that's kind of where I'm stuck at with this. It's my favorite one at this point. So the next videos I'm going to work on, and again, I've got to see when I have time to do this. I want to just kind of completely get cyanotype out of my system. So we're going to test making the prints more, what do you call it, more glossy. We're going to try waxing some prints. I want to try putting them, I've already done some of this before, trying putting them in albumin to give them a glossy look, or even going to try maybe some gelatin to see how that works. Also want to try pre-sizing paper with gelatin or albumin or whatever and see if the cyanotype solution will stay on it and tone on it to give it a more high definition, high resolution look. So a few more projects. Once I get to them, I want to like I said, get the cyanotype out of my system. So until I see you next time.